Hello, welcome everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
Thanks so much for joining.
Hello, good evening.
Great to see the faces. We're going to give a few more minutes for people to come in, and I'm very keen to see who it is attending from where. It's always to me amazing how we get folks from all over the world with common interests. So let's give folks a few more minutes, and if you want to post in the chat, that would be great as to where you're from. North Carolina, Ethiopia, Indiana, Chicago, isn't it? It's Sweden. Well, it's just amazing to me. So I started my morning at a learning science conference aimed at based in India. And then I spent the next few hours at a conference hosted in Jamaica. And here I am with my German colleagues and sharing time with all of you. So I think this is really an amazing world we live in with the capabilities. Argentina, Scotland, Brazil, New York City, Texas, Chicago, Florida, South Africa, Georgia, USA, Italy, Uganda. So how many do we have? We have 80 so far. Give just another couple minutes, and this will be recorded. So anybody that comes in late will be able to access the recording. Lebanon, Barbados, Zimbabwe. Absolutely terrific. And let me welcome everyone. And I'd like to introduce this session, but really I'm very excited because many of you may have participated in our webinars this past summer, the Re-Envision Medical Education, in an effort to sort of share insights and resources as we dealt with the pandemic. We're obviously still in the pandemic, but hopefully we have a way forward, and I hope many of you have been vaccinated, and if not, it will not be much longer. We had such a positive response from the summer series that we've decided to create an entire course around how to learn. There are a number of us that contribute to Lecturio, and really, one of my main focuses, both at Lecturio and outside, is to formulate better ways to learn and teach. So this is really the beginning of a whole series of courses and seminars that we hope will be very interactive. And so this first session is called Durable Learning in Medical Education. And the article of reference was sent to everyone. It's really the very first intro in a more in-depth series. Let me introduce myself. Many of you may know me, but for those that don't, I'm Dr. Peter Hornifer. I'm the Executive Dean of the All-American Institute of Medical Sciences in Jamaica. I also serve as Director of Medical Education Programs at Lecturio, and my clinical experience and past has been and still remains as a cardiothoracic surgeon. I've practiced, I trained and practiced in Baltimore, Maryland, and I am still located there. And the amazing capabilities of the internet allow me to have these three existences that I really consider very symbiotic. But before we progress, what I'd like to do is launch a poll, and Daniel is helping us. If you would launch the poll, and just to formalize where everyone's from, if you would all please take a few minutes to answer the poll, then we can see where everyone is and have that shared throughout. Turn my phone off here. So North America, I think everyone can see. Can everyone see the poll as it populates, or not yet? Am I the only one seeing that, Daniel?
Yeah, I'm going to share the results once we end it, then everyone can see.
Excellent. Thanks.
And Peter, you can just tell me when you want to close it.
So we have 75 out of 105. Let's give it another minute or so. All right. Well, we have 80%. That's a passing grade, perhaps. So do you want to? Why don't we end it there?
I think there was a problem. I think Stefan Wiesbauer might have logged in under the same account, and I just lost the poll. I can relaunch
it. I can end it maybe.
Can you? Okay. Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
And then share. So does everybody see it?
Yes.
So a good, a good contingent to North America, Europe, South America, Middle East, Africa, and Asia. So welcome to everyone from all around the world. We have deans, department heads, professors, and others. It'll be interesting to see what the others are. If you want to put that in the chat, just to know who is listening. Actually, I really hope we have some students as well, though we've not targeted students directly, I don't believe. Have you participated in a previous online event? And more than half have. So welcome back. I guess we have kept you hopefully interested. You've heard about it from Lecturio and some recommended by colleagues and LinkedIn, so as well as others. So welcome everyone. Let me see if I can get rid of that and move on to the format. So I wanted to share with you, and somebody seems to have drawn on it's best not to draw. I think, Daniel, can you keep people from having drawing capabilities? There we go. Thank you. I wanted to share with you a little bit the construct of this initial session and say that what is going into what we are developing, this Learn to Learn course, is a multi-person effort. We have physicians, we have educators, writers, and what we've decided to do, since there's so much information in the cognitive science literature, in presentations, and as I said at the very onset, perhaps before some of you have joined, I started my morning today attending a learning science conference focused in India, then went and spent the next few hours in Jamaica. It's really an institutional dean's meeting, but focused on educational methods. And here I am with you, and people are, I think, focused on this. I've been involved for 14 years. This has been my primary focus. But post-COVID, I think all of us have understood that it is crucial to understand better ways to learn and teach. And even pre-COVID, this was apparent to me because knowledge itself is exploding in ways that I don't think anybody ever would have predicted. So in 2020, and this was startling when I when I uncovered some of this information, that the doubling time in 2020 for knowledge is just over 70 days. And continues to rise exponentially. And we still expect our students and have an expectation that they know, much, if not all, of what is coming out. But there's good news to that. But this is a slide that I love, that actually one of my faculty at Ames, and Ames is, I feel incredibly fortunate to be part of this very unique capacity building institution. It has been, the idea was to use digital resources to allow for very high level medical education in an underserved part of an underserved country. So this is in a very undeveloped part of Jamaica. I have a dedicated, devoted faculty and an international group of students that all used to be on campus pre-COVID and now are scattered around the world waiting to come back. But we've never missed a class because of our digital presence. And one of the faculty in characterizing the challenges of medical school, to let our students know, presented a rendition of this that I love. And this is exactly the way I felt in starting medical school some 40 years ago. It's just overwhelming. And boy, did I wish I knew then what I knew now, how to learn. And I wish my teachers had known what we know about more effective ways to teach. And so that's really what we're going to focus on in what I hope is a collaborative way going forward over the rest of this year with periodic seminars and hopefully in a discussion-based format. We do have challenges. So you saw the exponential rise in information. And we also know that without attempts to retain, much of what we present is lost within days. So that's one of the reasons you're getting a recording of this, because I expect you to remember very little of it. But we're going to explore the tricks and the strategies to help you acquire more. And I am, I profoundly believe that to keep pace with knowledge and to produce effective physicians, we need a new approach to the medical education process. And you've heard me say that before. I think most people agree with that now, certainly from the conferences I attended this morning. I think everyone is focused in moving the same direction. And the good news is, so you remember the forgetting curve where most everything is forgotten. There are clear evidence-based strategies that have been tested in the classroom that can modify these forgetting curves. And by using methods, one of which we will talk extensively about going forward is spaced retrieval and retrieval-based strategies. You modify these forgetting curves by having intervals between attempts at retrieval. And so this is an overview of just some of the predominantly cognitive science strategies. And I don't want to be overly weighted towards that, but really my aha moment was when I was exposed to a wonderful book I hope many of you have read called Make It Stick by two cognitive scientists, and actually primarily authored by novelists, which made it easy to read and understandable, and focused on which cognitive science strategies would help this all-important process of essentially getting information into the brain. And this really is just a quick overview slide to share with you what we are going to talk about. But we're going to be addressing in our subsequent sessions these 6 foundational strategies and how they affect encoding, storage, and retrieval. And the sum of this process is what I would like to refer to as durable learning. It's really the goal. What we need is to achieve long-term knowledge retention. I frankly consider it a huge shortcoming of our present system that students will finish the first 2 years of a basic science curriculum and then require 4, 6, 8 weeks of review before they take a board exam, which is considered the benchmark for adequacy or mastery of those concepts. And we're going to talk later on in the series about the importance of foundational knowledge, about different structures of helping students acquire that knowledge. But there's a tremendous amount of study on this. Much of it not in the medical literature, but some of it increasingly is in the medical literature. And so I'd like you to, these at the bottom of the slide are what I consider the overarching principles, where you get your most bang for the buck, so to speak. And they're in somewhat separate domains from the course this past summer. You remember Dr. Harumi spent a fair amount of time in concepts of instructional design, how things are delivered and put together. Metacognition, we'll discuss at length. It's really a student and really all of us, our own ability to understand what we do and don't know and to learn how to learn more effectively. Spacing as a way to introduce and to learn topics. And spacing has really rarely been part of a curriculum until relatively recently. And the importance of retrieval, that frankly, the retrieval is probably the single most effective way to augment a concept or to facilitate storage of a concept in long-term memory, which is effectively infinite in capacity versus what we'll describe as short-term memory or working memory, which is very, very limited. So this is where we hope to head, and it's I think there's a very clear path to get there, but I think we need to rethink how we teach and learn. We have to apply learning science strategies and improve the process of knowledge acquisition, retention, and understanding. So, and what we are, our basic tenets and everything we do in the materials we produce, we try and base on evidence-based strategies. Much as we practice medicine, there's very little I do as a heart surgeon that I don't reference or I'm not able to reference studies that have demonstrated an efficacy, a sort of I always talk to my patients about, yes, there's a lot of risk to undergoing heart surgery, but in fact, I know statistically there's more risk for you not to have this operation. And I can share with them what the statistics are about success. And I think we need to be able to do the same thing in education. So our focus in this series, and we'll be writing articles that will be available. We will be doing a video course that I will be taping, and part and parcel of that will be these interactive sessions, because I really look forward to developing these thoughts with all of you, my fellow educators. And to that end, even though the focus is on learning, I'm absolutely convinced that the most important piece of this puzzle is the medical educator. I have no, I see in no way possible can effective learning be done without faculty, that new modalities, techniques, platforms cannot and will not replace educators. But I think we have to very carefully revisit just what medical educators do. Are they a sage on the stage? Are they the guide by the side? You've probably heard these, or a combination of both. And I think they are a combination of both. There is absolutely no doubt in the science literature that direct educational methods are highly effective, but there's an equal amount of evidence that says that an hour-long lecture without breaks and without using some of the learning science strategies we will go over is probably a waste of time. And so some of the things to consider, and this has been written about, especially in the COVID-19 era, is, what does a medical educator or faculty do? Are they the content curator? Do they choose and order and recommend content and even platforms and modalities? Are they the content creator? Do they adapt their clinical and frankly basic science insights and bedside teachings to different platforms or even in their own sessions? Are they a content moderator? And I think the answer to these is yes on all accounts. We absolutely are dependent on our faculty that contribute to the Lecturio platform. And, I learn so much from my faculty at Ames, but all these roles are crucial. So to make sure that I don't launch in, it's so tempting to share thoughts for a period of time. But I'd like to, in all these sessions, limit these introductory remarks to provide the context of the discussion. We provided an article in advance, and this will be our normal process going forward. Daniel, can you launch? We have a few questions now that would ask that you answer. Can you do that, Daniel?
Yeah.
Or have you lost that ability?
I unfortunately have lost that ability. If you scroll down, I believe you can launch it. If you scroll down to the bottom of the screen, there should be a list that pops up, and it will say
Polls.
polls. And if you click on that, you should have the option to launch poll 2. And if you do that, it will launch the poll.
I can relaunch a poll. I can stop sharing results. Let's see. If you say Stefan, and Stefan Wiesbauer is our terrific CEO. And Stefan, are you there? Are you able
I'm there,
to?
but it looks like I've just messed things up rather than being terrific. I think you need to make Daniel the host, Peter, which you can do.
Right, which I
might
did earlier.
sort it and give him full control.
All right. Thank you all for bearing with us. And let's see here. He should be. He is co-host.
Exactly. Can you make him host? That might sort it.
Daniel, are you there?
I am.
And can you do it?
Still no. Unfortunately not.
So,
But I think I can fix it by making.
yeah, so I would suggest we give Daniel some time, Peter, and you move on and revisit the poll is probably the
Absolutely.
most fluid option here.
And this is so characteristic, I think, of what we all experience as there are elements of what we've termed emergency remote teaching, how we're still all learning some of these new tools and trying to navigate this. So this is another slide from one of my faculty at Ames. I actually, we have periodic faculty development sessions at Ames. And previously, I would invite known speakers to give presentations. And I think we found them very interesting, but it was hard to didn't have as much participation. So for our last session, I actually asked each of the faculty to be the presenters and to focus on new strategies for education. And so one of my faculty members was to address the flipped classroom, and many people fear this, and I assure you this is nothing to be feared. But this was his introductory slide, which I thought was absolutely wonderful. So to that end, I would like
Peter?
to, yeah.
Peter, I'll jump in. We can launch the poll now. We got it
All right,
sorted.
well, let me go back a couple seconds and let's get our retrieve taking done out of the first bit. So these are easy questions. They're very low stakes. You know, none of you are identified. So hopefully we'll get 100% participation. And if you don't get these right, I will take it personally, because I will have to figure out how to do a better job at my teaching. If
We've got Timo. He's going to launch them. Give him just a second.
yeah, no, I think they are long.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Strange, because I can't even see them.
Yeah, no, they are working.
Okay.
They're working very well. And let's just give it a few more seconds, but I think we have some folks that aren't voting, and remember, it's all anonymous, so you can't you can't be penalized.
You get your price on.
And we've broken the 50% mark. We're almost at we're basically 2/3. If it helps, I'm feeling greatly relieved. Okay, well, maybe we'll, if I think it's not coming in quite as quickly, let's break the 100 mark, and then all right, why don't we call it, here, I can do that. Gotcha. Oops, we got somebody drawing on our slide again. Daniel, can you or someone put an end to that? I think they're probably trying to answer the questions. So let me share the results. This makes me feel much better. The first one's a little bit tricky. I did try and address, and this is really my definition that durable learning, and I think is so important, is long-term knowledge retention. I have to share with you one of my personal ambitions for AIMS, my school in Jamaica, is that through using learning science strategies, our students will eventually be able to finish their last course, take a deep breath, a couple days, and then take their board exams, do very well, and move on without a second thought. Now, I may be a bit delirious given the amount that needs to be accomplished, but if you look at learning science and how much can be changed and done, and to do that, you have to remember at the end of year 2 what you were taught in the first month of year 1. And that's why I think this durable learning is important in a pragmatic way. From a medical practitioner standpoint, you will find in the course there's so many advantages to having a huge treasure chest embedded in long-term memory, because it really affects higher order thinking, and the broader your long-term memory knowledge base is, the better you can make informed clinical decisions. And we'll be talking about all that in sessions to come. So which of the following among the evolving new roles, and basically I think you all got this right. It's all 3 of the content curator, the content creator, and the content moderator. And what's the best way to address the challenges discussed in the articles? I'm a firm believer of incorporating evidence-based learning strategies. It's how we practice medicine, and I think it's how we should practice medical education, frankly, education at large, I think. But obviously our focus here and mine is on medical education. So you all did very well. And as you'll find out, even if you didn't pick a right choice, the fact that you had to retrieve an answer will give you the opportunity to hopefully move these concepts out of working memory into durable long-term memory. So I'm going to stop sharing the poll, move this aside, and to practice the flipped classroom approach, I would like to revisit the discussion questions that many of you got ahead of time. And I think this will give further insights into how you responded. And thanks everyone that did respond. So how do you, and what I thought I'd do is review these briefly now, but would really like for other questions to come in. And I'd like to hear from all of you if how you feel we could go about augmenting durable learning. And in addition, if you have suggestions in any of these sessions as to how to continue the process going forward, because the intent is to create a community of interested educators so that we can all work together to improve the process. So how do you see the role of educator in your institution? We had the majority, they're still saying lecturer. And as I mentioned before, direct instruction is valuable. I presume for most of you, this is still the 1 hour lecture. And I have to say at Ames that is still the preference of some of my faculty. But we have those that are leading the way in flipping the approach, and it's becoming increasingly popular. And we will talk further on in the series about how to facilitate movement and adoption of these learning strategies. So I think this is great that 19% see faculty as coaches. Content creator has always been a part of faculty responsibility. The curator, I think, is a newer role, and technology, I think, is going to demand this because there's so many sources out there. If we aren't the editors as faculty, then I think our students will. Not everything on the internet is reliable, and that speaks to sort of moderator as well as what resources we provide and how we help students use them. Have you implemented evidence-based strategies? Still a minority, and everybody some, and that's good to see. Dual coding is really a presentation where it can be thought of as a presentation with PowerPoints, but there are many nuances to that make learning effective. There are textbooks and hundreds of manuscripts written about the various ways to effectively produce multimedia learning. So there's a big body of evidence that can help improve how we even institute some of these strategies. And metacognition, understanding where you stand, the student that thinks they're prepared but aren't, and is very important. What challenges have you encountered? Students that feel they do not have enough time to implement these strategies. And this is a very, very good point, but has also been addressed in the science literature. In the institutions that have done the studies into many of these evidence-based strategies, they had to do so in a controlled fashion, and that introduced complexity and time. But what was fascinating to me is that in those institutions, the takeaway at the end of the study was that the learning was so much more efficient after the strategies had been adopted, that it more than made up for the time lost in transition. And perhaps, we can take the analogy that I know I struggled to figure out my smartphone for a long time, but the more I use it, the better I get at it. And it went from costing me a lot of time to become familiar with it to being an indispensable vehicle. So a very good point, but we need to help students adopt the strategies and realize that ultimately learning will be more efficient? And then which learning strategies do you feel have the best outcomes in terms of students' performance? And this is very interesting. Can I see in the chat, perhaps, and this was a smaller sample size, but and maybe we can't launch, I don't think we can launch an ad hoc poll. And maybe we'll have more interactive tools going forward, but concrete examples is a very solidly evidence-based tool, which is very valuable, but in fact is probably not the most powerful. The most powerful, and many of you may know this, is actually the retrieval-based strategies. If faculty, instead of being presenters of knowledge, could be retrievers of knowledge, we would probably make the single largest change in efficacy in learning. So additional questions that we launched: have you tried platform-based approaches to implementing these strategies? And a little less than a third, yes. I'm a huge advocate of this, and would love to, be able to discuss that with you. It's frankly one of the reasons I reached out to Lecturio, and they kindly allowed me to join forces with them and let them, they let me bend their ear, and I get on my soapbox regularly to them as they create a platform which is fully compliant and implements these strategies. I know of no better way to help implement this approach. And there are other ways. And when the internet goes down in Jamaica, which is increasingly rare, but it does happen, we have alternative approaches that we've discussed. Have you been able to study the effect of implementing evidence-based learning strategies? I'm in the process of getting that started at Ames. I think we absolutely need to, all of us in our medical professions, publish and report. I published extensively in my professional field of cardiothoracic surgery, but I'm now embarking on focusing on the efficacy of implementing evidence-based strategies, and we have a robust data collection system on our Lecturio platform, which allows for data collection and evaluation of these strategies. And I love to see this answer. 89% are interested. So please reach out. I really hope that we can work together. We have some other specific questions, but we're coming, we're moving along within the hour. We want to try and keep it within the confines of the time, and there will be other sessions to follow. Let me go through and see the chat, and I don't know, students, and please feel free to raise your hands as well. Love to see faces and cameras. I'm always pushing our students and faculty to remain visible, if at all possible. And we can, I haven't been able to follow. It's hard to multitask. You'll find out, but I have a limited working memory. So I'm just looking at the chat. Anybody want to unmute their mics and ask a question? So we have a discussion between Lisa Quinn. Students often use retrieval activities, questions, tools for proving learning. It's getting them to see these tools as improving learning. And yes, to Lisa Quinn, there you are. I don't absolutely crucial point. In my perfect world, we would give retrieval exercises on a daily basis and get rid of final exams. We obviously need to assess mastery, and my curriculum at Ames is actually modular and fully mastery based now, so that you progress as you master knowledge blocks and integrated systems blocks. And we still have summative testing. We're in the midst of a culture change. But this is absolutely right, that it's not that you prove that you've learned, it's part of the process. Dr. Quinn, would you like to elaborate on this?
Just check, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Hello.
I don't. Do you have a camera, and you don't need to if it's not convenient? I know some people are at all hours. There we go. Great.
I apologize if my dog's bark in the background.
That's nice.
I work in academic support at Leicester Medical School and have a lot of conversations with students who are struggling with all the things that you've just described. And I absolutely share your passion of trying to support students in adopting the evidence-based strategies for durable learning. And I think one of the things that I find particularly challenging, and it's an area of research for myself, is quite often a good proportion of students are aware of what are effective strategies, and we're doing a lot of work to kind of increase that awareness at Leicester. But it's like with it's like telling someone that exercise is good for you. You know exercise is good for you, but it's hard work, and it's really difficult, I think, for students to adopt the effective strategies like retrieval and spacing, because they are so effortful and they are so hard, which is what makes them good, but also is what makes them so difficult to adopt. And I just wondered what your thoughts and experiences were on how you have got students to sort of better engage with these strategies purely because they are more difficult.
Right, and the concept of desirable difficulties, I think, is so important. And to me, what's fascinating, and I think maybe an advantage in that we're medically oriented, is that there's a physiologic basis for the efficacy of desirable difficulties. And what I fall back on, and what has helped me tremendously, is understanding the why. And that's where we started this durable learning series, and this first session with understanding that this is an explosion of knowledge, and that you have things like the forgetting curve. So I think students need to understand why they should learn differently, that there is evidence that shows that different strategies work, and this is true for faculty as well. If you have the why make the change, and then are you sure this is going to work? Is it worth the effort? And then what's the physiologic basis? Once you start understanding about dopamine release in the neurosynaptic connections as the result of unexpected reward, and how that affects durable learning. No student likes to have to restudy. No student likes to fail. So I think my endeavor and my passion in creating this course, and I'm very grateful to those at Lecturio for allowing me to add to all their content. They have an incredible content platform, and they have great methodology, but there was no course about learning. So shouldn't you learn how to learn before you are tackled with this fire hydrant amount of stuff to learn? So that's what we're building, is a course which will help explain, the potential of learning differently and how to go about doing it. I also glad you know my background. I'm a surgeon, so I'm pragmatic. We're going to try, this is a surgical saying, keep it stupid simple, because it's pretty much all we can handle as surgeons. And so I will try and adhere to that through the course and provide practical solutions. I also hope that you all reach out and provide your answers to your questions, because I don't have all the answers. So how do I get the
Peter, you've muted yourself. Peter, we can't hear you. You've muted
Oh
yourself.
boy,
There you
has
go.
that been going on for a while? I don't know how I muted
Just a
myself.
couple seconds. Just repeat the
Okay.
last thing you started saying.
Yeah. So I'm not, boy, that did it on its own. So anyway, I have not, I've had partial success, and I have an increasing success with the program at Ames that is very rewarding, but I'm by no means there yet. And what I wanted to say is I really hope all of you in these sessions going forward help provide answers as well. So I'm going to share with you everything I know over the course of these sessions, but I really hope you do. So the students, if they understand the basis for desirable difficulties, the physiologic basis, I think they will adopt it. I think the same is true for faculty. I want to jump to actually another question from Laura Juarez, which I think is excellent. The flipped classroom has fallen completely flat when I've observed, because the professor shows up and says, okay, what did you not get from the videos? And when I first launched this idea a couple of years ago at Ames, the first feedback from a professor who did this was that the only thing that's flipped at Ames is the dean. The point is, you can't just throw resources at the students. It requires a new approach to the teaching methodology, and I encourage you all to reach out between sessions and after sessions to see how you can really utilize platforms well. And this particular faculty member had not at that point, and we were new, and just I was new to Ames, and we were just getting started, but didn't understand how to leverage the power of the Lecturio platform in providing assignments. So I'd like to encourage a shared understanding of what we have, and much like our understanding of learning science, the development of the platform is an ongoing, active endeavor, and we'd like everybody to share in that process. But so you can't just show up and say, tell me about the videos. There's a construct, and we'll have an entire session on the flipped classroom. So excellent question. There are lots of them here. And anybody want to pop up with some question points were raised in conversation? We emphasize test scores. Right, there's a question here about test scores and evaluating and ranking. I've actually converted our Ames grading structure to effectively a pass-fail structure. And I think we can be informed again by the learning science. We want low stakes retrieval exercises. We want to, I think student stress is a very important thing to consider, and we need to address that as well. And not just for their well-being, but it counteracts, you actually in stressful, undesirable situations, you actually can measure a drop in dopamine release, and it can actually impede learning. How do we tackle so durable learning and lifelong learning? How do we tackle this double understanding? And it's a little bit nuanced and it's somewhat arbitrary, as much as in learning science terminology, people have their own sort of definitions of sorts. I view lifelong learning as what I'm doing now. I've learned more, and I'm 40 years into my career, and I think I learned the most in my first 10 years, and I've learned the second most in my last 10 years. They've been very different, but I would say a lifelong learner is someone who is always bringing things from working memory and new experiences and adding to durable or long-term memory. Durable memory is simply how to get something into your memory that you can pull out reflexively. When I end up with a massive bleeder in the operating room, I don't go through an exercise of having learned this or pull out a book. I know how to deal with that because regretfully I've dealt with it before. And there are things I do much less surgery now, but having done thousands of operations, there are things that I will never forget. And that's durable learning. If you used to ride a bicycle and you don't ride a bicycle for 10, 15 years, you get back on, and chances are, I think you'll be off and riding pretty quickly, maybe a little wobbly for the first few turns of the pedals, but you'll get there quickly. So that's the difference in my mind between durable learning and long-term knowledge retention and lifelong learning. Need to be trained in new ways of learning. Flipped classroom is one of these. The pandemic speeded up the process, agreed. Flipped implemented in different ways, or use quizzing and prompting. Excellent. And I hope we have really looking forward to the flipped classroom sessions, because we had one before. And when we focus on the science behind it, I think it'll stimulate a lot of questions, and Bohr style questions, polling in flipped classrooms. Polling is powerful, absolutely. So we got most of you involved today through the polls, much more so than in the discussion. Though all these questions are terrific. My goodness, there are 31 new messages. Okay, and I'm way behind here. Anybody from our team want to grab a question or suggest, because I'm way behind. There's a huge.
I think there's some questions that were submitted before the presentation we could dive into as well.
Yeah, but let me just see, great value of spacing and retrieval. Yeah, so I will share those as well, but I think it's wonderful as people are.
Peter, if you were referring to the effect of boards going pass-fail, I know you commented a little bit on pass-fail at Ames, but maybe some comments on the pass-fail change of the boards and how you see that affecting the system more widely.
Right, and specifically, you're referring to USMLE, I believe.
I think it was called boards, and I think so that's probably what people are referring to. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So in the U.S., the USMLE has gone to a pass-fail. We have found that our students are scoring lower overall with a pass-fail system. They seem to have their goals set at a lower standard at this school. So let me, maybe if that's the question, I have not found that. Now, what we did, quite honestly, is we reserved a category called honors. So you pass a module or a course and you move on. But if you are exemplary in your performance, that is, that is noted, and appreciated in the, in your record, and you're recognized for that. And interestingly, from the science, there is a difference. You can't reward folks all the time, because if they get used to a constant pat on the back, they don't have those little dopamine releases. But if it is notable, then they do get that little dopamine surge, and that helps them feel good. It induces motivation, and they perform better. So it's not, you can't just implement one part of this strategy. And in fact, as our learning science team at Lecturio takes on this subject, it is vast and complicated and interrelated. You'll see in that first or the slide with the learning science strategies, they don't actually fit into little boxes where each strategy affects one part of the learning system. In terms of boards going pass fail, I think that is in many ways, from a cognitive science standpoint, a good thing. In terms of stress, I think there was, at least I saw in my school, an incredible fear of this exam, and what the particular scores would be, and students performing less well on the exam than would be predicted by their academic performance. Otherwise, I know that there's a lot of discussion about how to evaluate students for residency positions if you don't have discriminating scores. And I think we all need to address that issue, perhaps by expanding the number of residency positions. And I think we can utilize platforms and technology to augment the educational aspects that are required as part of residency, and broaden the number of places that can realistically offer residency positions. But that's a whole nother subject, happy to go into. So I hope that addresses it. I think this pass fail on the boards in some will be a positive move, and that's why it was undertaken. So interested in studying the effect of implementing evidence-based learning strategies. We'll still get questions. Why adopt? So evidence would help. And that's absolutely true. And I hope as people follow us through this series of seminars, you'll get an understanding of what this evidence is. And it's very powerful. One of the things I hope to help you with, because everyone is so short of time, is that our team goes to all these conferences and does all this reading. And one of the things I hope to do is help synthesize it, and bring this body of knowledge to you, to help you get this in smaller, digestible sound bites, if you would, going forward. So, that is our attempt to improve the knowledge of medical educators in this space. Come back to previous learning. How do we, so the value of spacing and time to retrieve, come back to previous learning. How do we balance time to allow for that where there is such a volume of new information coming forward? By improving the efficiency of the storage process. It would be my answer to that. I think if we understand that there are strategies that make this more efficient and effective, then we will continue to increase the capabilities, much as athletes. Now they're being trained differently. They run faster, they jump higher. Yes, they have to train harder, but there are motivational coaches. There's a whole industry that has evolved around training of athletes. And one of our neighboring institutions in Jamaica is a school of sports medicine. where a very well-known sprinter, Usain Bolt, can train through, and the science involved in training athletes is very advanced. And all I'm proposing is that we use the same scientific approach to our educational process. I'm very grateful. We have all sorts of modalities on the Lecturio platform that we're working with. And I would like to encourage everyone to reach out and explore the platform more with the members of the Lecturio team, because I think you'll see how it can be effective. And as importantly, please let me know and all of us know if you say, gee, this looks great, but boy, wouldn't it be neat if it did this or did that? Because I can tell you from Stefan Wischbauer on down, everybody is completely dedicated to creating the best tool to help people learn and teach. With that, I think, this, again, really appreciate it. I'm always stunned by our participation from all over the world. We try and pick a time that suits as many people globally as possible. If you have colleagues or you stayed up late, these will be recorded, and we'll have a website for this whole series, and will be linked into the course. It's related scientifically focused articles and all the related content. So thank you everyone for joining. It's been a pleasure. All the comments were terrific.